I built a company worth $100 million. Let that sink in for a moment. 100 million. The kind of number most people only dream about. The kind of success that puts your name in magazines, gets you invited to conferences, makes strangers ask for your autograph at airports. But I lost my daughter, not to an accident, not to illness. I lost her in a way that's somehow worse because it was entirely my choice. I'm 76 years old now. I'm a single dad. I'm wealthy beyond measure. And I'm completely, utterly alone. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. Would you trade your relationship with your child for everything I have? Because that's exactly what I did, and I can't take it back. Let me take you back to when I was 30 years old. My name is Michael, and back then, I was just another young father with big dreams and bigger ambitions. My wife Sarah and I had just welcomed our daughter Emma into the world. She was perfect, this tiny thing with Sarah's eyes and my stubborn chin. I remember holding her in the hospital, feeling this overwhelming sense of responsibility. I made a promise to myself right there. I was going to build something great. I was going to give Emma everything I never had. So I started my company from our garage. It was a tech consulting firm, nothing fancy at first, just me, a computer, and a phone line. Sarah would bring Emma downstairs sometimes while I worked. I'd take breaks to hold her, to watch her sleep in her bassinet next to my desk. Those early months, I really believed I could have it all. The business, the family, the perfect balance everyone talks about, but nobody actually achieves. Then the company started growing, faster than I expected. Within 2 years, I had 5 employees. Within 4 years, we landed our first major corporate client. The money started flowing in, and with it came the demands. 80-hour weeks became my new normal. Then 90. I'd leave before Emma woke up and come home after she'd gone to bed. Sarah would leave notes on the kitchen counter, little updates about Emma's day, her first word, her first steps, things I was supposed to witness, but didn't. I remember Emma's 4th birthday party. Sarah had spent days planning it, decorating our backyard with streamers and balloons. Emma wore this little yellow dress, and she kept running to the window, asking when Daddy would be home. I had promised I'd be there. I swore I wouldn't miss it. But a crisis came up at work, the kind that felt urgent at the time, but I can't even remember now what it was about. I called Sarah and said I'd be late. Just an hour, I promised. Emma waited for me for 2 hours before they cut the cake without me. When I finally arrived, she was already in her pajamas. She looked at me with this expression I'll never forget, not anger, just resignation, like she already knew this was how things would be. I told myself she was too young to remember. I told myself I'd make it up to her later. I told myself that what I was building, this empire of success, was all for her benefit. Every missed recital, every forgotten parent-teacher conference, every time I chose a business dinner over a bedtime story, I justified it with the same lie. I was doing this for her. But really, I was doing it for me, for my ego, for the high of watching those revenue numbers climb higher and higher. By the time Emma turned 10, the company was worth $20 million. We'd moved into a bigger house, one with a pool and a home theater and more rooms than we knew what to do with. Emma had her own bedroom suite on the 2nd floor, decorated however she wanted. I thought I was giving her everything. What I didn't realize was that I'd already taken away the one thing that mattered. She stopped asking me to come to her school events, stopped showing me her drawings and test papers. When I was home, which wasn't often, We'd sit at the dinner table in this uncomfortable silence. Sarah would try to bridge the gap, asking Emma about her day, then asking me about mine, trying to facilitate some kind of connection between us. But Emma had learned to exist without me. She'd adapted to my absence the way you adapt to living with a missing limb. You don't forget it's gone. You just learn to function anyway. There was one night that stands out, though at the time I didn't recognize its significance. Emma was 12. She came into my home office around 9 in the evening, holding this elaborate poster board. It was a science project about renewable energy, and she'd spent weeks on it. The poster was covered in charts and diagrams, and she'd built this little model of a solar panel system out of cardboard and wires. Her face was lit up with pride and excitement as she walked toward my desk. I was on a conference call with investors in Singapore. The call was important, the kind that could make or break our expansion into Asian markets. Emma stood there, holding her project, waiting for me to acknowledge her. I put my hand over the phone receiver and whispered 2 words that would echo through the rest of our relationship. Wait here. She nodded, still hopeful, and sat down in the chair across from my desk, carefully holding her poster board so it wouldn't get damaged. My call went on for 45 minutes. When I finally hung up, I turned to talk to Emma, but she was gone. The chair was empty. Later, I found out she'd waited for 30 minutes before quietly leaving. She never showed me that project, never asked me to look at it again. She got an A on it, Sarah told me. I never even saw it completed. The distance between us wasn't dramatic. There was no big fight, no door-slamming argument. It was just this slow, steady erosion, like water wearing away stone. Every missed moment added another layer of space between us. Every time I chose work over her, she learned a little more not to need me. And I was too busy chasing success to notice what I was losing until it was already gone. When Emma was 14, Sarah asked for a divorce. I can't say I was surprised. Our marriage had become a business arrangement, 2 people sharing a house and a last name, but nothing else. She'd tried for years to get me to slow down, to see what was happening to our family, but I'd always had an answer: just one more deal, just until we hit 50 million, just until we secure this client. There was always a reason to keep going, to keep sacrificing, to keep telling myself that later would be better. Sarah got the house. I got weekends with Emma, a custody arrangement that looked generous on paper but meant almost nothing in practice, because by then, Emma had already checked out of our relationship. She'd come to my new apartment on Friday nights, do her homework in the guest room, be polite and distant at dinner, then leave on Sunday afternoon with barely a goodbye. She wasn't angry. That might have been easier. She was just indifferent, like I was an obligation she had to fulfill every other weekend. The company hit $50 million in valuation when Emma was 16. I threw a huge celebration at a downtown hotel. Champagne, speeches, awards. Emma was there because Sarah made her come. She wore a black dress and stood in the corner, checking her phone, waiting for it to be over. At one point, someone asked me to give a speech. I stood up there in front of 200 people and talked about sacrifice, about dedication, about what it takes to build something meaningful. I saw Emma look up from her phone for just a moment. Our eyes met. And in that look, I saw the truth I'd been avoiding for years. I had built something meaningful, but I'd destroyed something infinitely more valuable in the process. The company reached $100 million when I was 52 years old. Emma was 22 by then, graduated from college, and living 3 states away. We talked maybe once a month, brief phone calls, where she'd update me on her job, her apartment, her life that I knew nothing about. She was polite, always polite. But there was no warmth there, no real connection. I'd become something like a distant uncle in her life, someone she acknowledged existed but didn't particularly need or want around. I threw myself even harder into work after hitting that milestone, because if I stopped, if I slowed down even for a moment, I'd have to confront what my life had become. A string of acquisitions and board meetings and business trips to cities that all looked the same. I dated occasionally, but nothing stuck. How could it? I'd already proven I didn't know how to maintain a relationship with the people I supposedly loved most. My 60th birthday was the first time I felt genuinely afraid. Not about getting older, but about what getting older meant. I looked at my life and realized I'd spent 30 years building an empire and 0 years building anything that would matter when I was gone. The company would be sold eventually, absorbed into some larger corporation. My name would be forgotten within a generation. But Emma, she was supposed to be my legacy. And I'd thrown that away for stock options and revenue projections. I tried to reconnect with her then, sent her emails, left voicemails, invited her to dinner whenever she was in town, which wasn't often. She'd come occasionally, and we'd sit across from each other in expensive restaurants, making small talk like strangers. I wanted to apologize, to explain, to somehow make her understand what I'd been thinking all those years. But how do you explain 20 years of absence in a single conversation? How do you apologize for missing someone's entire childhood? When I was 68, I had a heart attack. Not a massive one, but enough to put me in the hospital for a week. Sarah called Emma to let her know. Emma sent flowers and a card. "Get well soon, Dad." She didn't visit. She was busy with work, she said. She couldn't get away. And I realized, lying in that hospital bed, that I'd taught her that. I'd taught her that work comes first, that being present doesn't matter as much as being successful. I'd modeled that behavior her entire life, and now she was simply giving me back what I'd given her. Distance, politeness, excuses. I sold the company when I was 70. $120 million after all expenses and taxes. More money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. I thought maybe with that weight lifted, with no more excuses about being busy, I could finally rebuild what I'd lost. I called Emma and asked if we could spend some time together. Maybe take a trip, just the two of us. She said yes, but her voice had that same polite distance it always did. We went to Europe for 2 weeks, Paris, Rome, Barcelona, cities I'd visited dozens of times for business, but never really seen. It was awkward. We ran out of things to talk about by day 3. We'd take tours and eat meals and walk through museums, and there was this enormous space between us that no amount of beautiful scenery could bridge. One night in Rome, we were having dinner at this restaurant overlooking the Colosseum. Emma was looking at her phone, and I just started talking, told her everything I'd kept bottled up for decades. How sorry I was, how I'd made the wrong choices, how if I could go back, I'd do it all differently. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she put down her phone and looked at me with this expression of profound sadness. She told me she'd forgiven me years ago, that she understood I'd done what he thought was right. But forgiveness doesn't rebuild what's been torn down, she said. You can't get back the years, Dad. You can't undo what's already done. We can be civil, we can be respectful, but we can't be close. That window closed a long time ago. I'm 76 now. I live alone in a beach house in Northern California. It's beautiful here, peaceful. Every morning, I sit on my deck and watch the sun rise over the ocean. I read, I walk, I keep myself busy with hobbies I never had time for before. Emma calls me once a month, like clockwork. We talk for 15, maybe 20 minutes. She tells me about her work. She's a lawyer now, successful in her own right. She never asks me for anything, never needs me for anything. She's getting married next year. She told me over the phone last Tuesday, said I'm invited. Of course. She said it the way you'd invite a distant relative you feel obligated to include. I told her I wouldn't miss it. We both know there's no weight behind that promise. I've said I wouldn't miss things before. Sometimes, late at night, I go through old photos. There's one of Emma at 4 years old in that yellow birthday dress, waiting for me to come home. There's another of her at 12, holding that solar energy project I never looked at. There's one from her high school graduation where she's smiling for the camera, and I'm standing next to her, checking my phone. Every photo is evidence of the same crime, committed over and over again. I was there, but I wasn't present. I showed up, but I didn't see her. People ask me sometimes about my success. How did you build such an empire? What's your secret? And I want to tell them the truth. It's not complicated. You just have to be willing to sacrifice everything that actually matters. You have to be willing to trade moments you can never get back for money that means nothing when you're alone. You have to be willing to lose your child one day at a time until one day you wake up and realize she's gone. Here's what nobody tells you about success. You can rebuild a company. If it fails, you can start over. You can learn from your mistakes, pivot your strategy, try again. But you can't rebuild a childhood. You can't go back and show up to the birthday party. You can't undo the night you told your daughter to wait while you finished a call that didn't matter. Those moments are gone forever, and no amount of money can buy them back. I have $100 million. I have a beautiful house. I have respect from colleagues and a legacy in my industry. And I have absolutely no one who needs me. No one who wants me around just because I'm me. Emma has built a full, complete life without me in it. She's happy, I think. She's successful and kind and strong, and none of that has anything to do with me. I wanted to give her everything. Instead, I gave her absence, and she learned to thrive without me. If you're a father reading this, and you're telling yourself that you're working this hard for your kids, let me be clear, you're lying. I lied to myself for 30 years, and now I'm paying the price. Your kids don't need a bigger house. They don't need expensive vacations, or the latest phones, or a trust fund. They need you. The actual you, present and engaged in there. Not the exhausted version who comes home after they're asleep. Not the distracted version checking emails at dinner. They need you to show up and stay. Because here's the truth I learned too late. You don't lose your child in one dramatic moment. You lose them in 1,000 tiny choices. Every time you pick work over them, every time you say wait, every time you promise you'll make it up to them later, they're learning they're not your priority. And eventually, they stop waiting for you to prove otherwise. They adapt, they grow up, they move on. And then one day, you're 76 years old, living alone in a beach house with all the success you ever wanted and none of the love you needed. Don't become me. Don't become a single dad at 76, wealthy beyond measure and completely alone. Don't trade your child's childhood for a number in a bank account. Because I promise you, when you're sitting where I am now, that number won't mean anything. But the moments you missed, those will haunt you every single day for the rest of your life. I built a $100 million company, but I lost my daughter. And if I could go back and choose differently, I wouldn't hesitate for a second. I'd choose her every single time. But I can't go back. None of us can. All I can do is tell you my story and hope you make a different choice. Hope you put down the phone. Hope you show up to the birthday party. Hope you see what matters before it's too late. Because it will be too late. Faster than you think. And you can't buy back time. Not with all the money in the world.